Hi and welcome to this presentation on researching long-term interactions with Haru for the HMC Preconference. I'm Eleanor Sandry and I'm going to be populating the tiny part at the bottom of right hand of your screen, and above me you can see Haru the robot looking down at me. The presentation has three sections. I'm going to introduce Haru first and analyse the ways this robot has been designed to operate and a few of the contexts within which the robot may be positioned for research into human-robot communication. Then I'm going to consider long-term HRI research, some of the difficulties of doing that sort of research and also highlighting its value. And then I'm going to outline some early plans for my qualitative research with Haru that asks open questions and uses methodologies that may be unusual in HRI research. The goal for Haru's development team was to create an emotive anthropomorphic tabletop robot capable of sustaining long-term human interaction. My presentation in the main conference analyses the design process for Haru in quite a lot of detail and what its implications were for Haru's communication. If you need to have access to that and you don't, then please just contact me and I'll give you a link. While Haru's design team sought to step away from a kind of literal humanoid or animal form, the anthropomorphic elements of this design are pretty clear to me. Haru Beta's design includes two expressive eyes that are animated on TFT displays with separate LED strips above that act as eyebrows. And the eyes can be tilted independently and each one can move in and out of its casing. And a LED matrix on the robot's body provides a kind of a mouth and in fact now also cheek-like expressions. So I think this design is quite clearly anthropomorphic, but it's good to note that Haru's creators also embraced the way that this robot's design allowed the head and neck, or the eyes and neck, to move like a person's hands, arms and shoulders as well, and that opens up broader possibilities for Haru's communication to be both like that of a human, but also fundamentally different because of its form, but still easily read by humans interacting with the robot. Researchers Caldwell and Lacey note that it may be important for social robots to maintain this type of alterity or otherness, so there's an impression that there's more going on than what the user may know of the robot just on the surface. And this idea is probably particularly useful for sustaining long-term interactions between humans and this type of robot. So the robot retains a level of mystery, it may help it to hold people's attention for a bit longer and also retain their interest in continued interactions over time. So although Haru does definitely look cute, another way of considering this robot is using the Japanese word kawaii, which kind of draws attention to the way that Haru can also be playful, kind of has an inquisitive attitude and an ability to surprise people to catch them off guard. Haru's communication is actually being developed further than the non-verbal level which it was taken in the beta version. Haru can produce a voice now, so it can speak and produce non-verbal sounds. So in fact this robot communicates across a triple structure of language, paralanguage and kinesics. Extending the sense of Haru's otherness is the fact that the robot can also express emotion through coloured lights, the ability to project content onto a wall or a screen as well using a little projector. So there's actually very clear non-human communication elements for this robot, as well as the quite anthropomorphic level of communication that's going on. There are two streams in the robot's development in terms of the sorts of research that are going to take place. The first positions Haru as a form of hybrid telepresence platform, and this capitalises on Haru's potential to add expressiveness when someone is communicating at a distance, maybe just in text and with voice, and cannot provide a video feed, for example. But even when a video feed is supported, in fact, it's been argued that an addition of a means to support gestural and body language might help, particularly when you're presenting, say, to a number of people rather than just talking to someone directly in front of you through the robot. Using Haru for telepresence also opens up the potential not to actually share video at all, and early researchers identified the way that this may reduce the sense and the stress around the idea that you're surveilling someone and their space at a distance for both the teleoperator and also for the person, the remote person, addressing some privacy concerns. The other stream to Haru's research development is as a social agent, and so this positions Haru in its own right, as able to communicate in its own right, building Haru's ability to develop and express its own personality. The aim is to make Harry seem somewhat alive to people during interaction. And that's designed not only to support Harry's communication, but also to build relationships with people over time as the robot interacts and collaborates with them in shared activities. And here you can see rock, paper, scissors is one of the early activities that they're testing with, but I'm hoping that's going to develop into different directions as well. And Harry's probably going to be positioned in various different contexts for research too, so as a receptionist for an organisation, an information provider maybe in public spaces, and a personal assistant, educator or companion in the home. And Harry could also potentially assist with managing smart devices and smart home systems, for example. So long-term HRI research then has particular challenges and offers particular opportunities. My involvement with Harry started after the initial design and development, and I'm now trying to consider how my particular type of research can add value to the project. And I'm particularly interested in this idea of long-term research. So I did some searching, and there's relatively little long-term HRI research, and de Graaf et al. Note that few studies have investigated the long-term use of technological systems, in particular in homes. And so the traditional technology acceptance literature actually lacks a body of work around long-term opportunities. So this research is valuable though. The development of user experiences with a technology or gaining user skills might change the user's attitude towards or uses of, or even their conceptualization of a technology. And so de Graaf would argue that we need to be doing this sort of research. And this, of course, was also part of the stated goal for Harry, so I'm interested in it. So one of the reasons for the lack of research is probably to do with the fact that robotic technologies are not generally robust enough to be studied outside of the lab for extended periods of time, and Harry's no exception to this. So Harry's a research platform, quite difficult to gain access to this robot, and also I think there are some questions around robustness, particularly if you're going to put it out into the wild. There are also sets of challenges that are kind of noted as being likely to face social robots in the long term. And these often are related to the need to create robots that are enjoyable and easy to use up front, so they capture your attention and it's really easy in the short term, and then in the long term you need to keep them functionally relevant. So you need to keep users interested even after the initial excitement of having a new robot abates. So there are a few ways that robots are expected to be able to fulfill these types of challenges, and these are just some of the ones I found. So based around narrative, so the idea of using deliberative and adaptive narratives to enrich repeated interactions over time. Then there's the idea of gamification, the potential of using badges and challenges or feedback and levels or some kind of progress rewards and points to gamify interactions with a robot, but also this contains the idea of social interaction more generally and story and theme related to narrative. So gamification and narrative kind of operate in similar ways. I'm particularly interested in the final one, ideas of co-development. So Derashev et al. Highlights co-development, mutual learning and development alongside ideas of taking physical and emotional care of a robot. Their work suggests a flexible approach to social robotics, where you highlight the fact that the users kind of get involved with an inorganic life form rather than a utilitarian or hedonic product. So you're taking a robot beyond function and entertainment and turning it more into something that you actually live with. I'm quite interested in that idea, but I want to temper it with the sense that the robot is still a machine. So given that Haru is completely new to me and the situation with COVID-19 is actually making it quite difficult to work out how to do research now, I need to come up with ways of using this robot for my own research. And I need to move past the fact that most of my research to date has involved critical textual analysis of videos and texts and things like that. I've actually got a robot now. So I'm thinking of using autoethnography as a way of looking at how my responses to Haru work. It's not often a methodology used for HRI or social robotics research more generally, although there are some exceptions, and this one from Verne in 2020 used autoethnography as a way of analysing what it was like to get used to using a robot lawnmower. So there's a note here about why autoethnography is useful, giving access to events and personal experiences, even if they don't happen that often, and the idea that thoughts and reflections were important for understanding how one's goals and values might change when you adapt to a robot. Verne also notes that there's a dilemma of a relationship between first order participation, initial perceptions if you like, and second order reflections on a more abstract and analytical level, so interpretative work. And I think that's quite difficult for me as well. I'm not really a natural diary writer, so I'm going to try out a simplified form of ecological momentary assessment, EMA, to prompt me to keep moment by moment notes of what the interaction with Haru is like and my response to Haru in a kind of a fairly standardized way. So I'm going to experiment with writing up my experiences with Haru and developing thick descriptions of what it's like to interact with and through Haru. And this, again, thick description, comes from autoethnography. It's not really a technique you see much in robotics research, although James et al. Used it when they were researching telepresence, and they were basing their use of that on Pontoretto. The idea that thick description captures the thoughts and feelings of participants, in this case me as a participant, as well as the often complex web of relationships among them. And that might be relationships between me and the robot, but also me and the person teleoperating the robot. James et al. Suggests that this sort of finding can't be extrapolated to larger populations, and they seem to think it can only be used to inform future research in terms of survey questions and interview schedule design. And that draws attention to the difficulties of embedding this sort of qualitative research into an area, HRI, which primarily seems to be interested a lot in quantitative research, in scientific research. It's like you're trying to give what is effectively an unscientific perspective and show the value of that. But I'm encouraged by positive reviews of work such as Seeing Like a Rover by Janot Vertesi, which is a book from 2015, studying the responses of mission scientists to Mars rovers and using thick description. And the reviews of that book really highlight the value of that type of observation and recording in its own right. And I think the fact that Vertesi was asked to talk about the project at the 2019 International Conference on Human-Robot Interaction also indicates a kind of current interest in this type of research in the community. So I'm hoping that what I'm suggesting might actually work quite well. So I'm going to be really interested to hear what you think about this, share ideas, ask questions, please, using the conference platform. Also, you can find me on Twitter, and I've shared my email address here too. So thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the pre-conference.